because Han Li possesses the startling thunder bamboo. Nangong Wan was afflicted with a powerful curse by another, and so, as Han Li emerges from his seclusion in the small city of Dajang, he prepares to confront the person who cast the curse. Junior brother, you are out of seclusion. Is the magic treasure refined? The old man, sensing something, waved his hand, and at a glance saw Han Li in the doorway. He exclaimed with pleasant surprise, I have finally, just barely, finished refining it all. Senior brother, I heard that person sent another jade slip, and that it contains the location for our meeting. Is that true? Han Li's expression, compared to 1 month ago, had an added air of composure. He asked in a deep voice, That is right. He wants to meet you at the summit of Tianju Mountain. This is the jade slip he sent. Go ahead and take a look, the silver-haired old man said with a nod, and tossed one green jade slip over. Han Li caught the jade slip, and immediately immersed his spiritual sense into it. After quickly scanning it, he snorted. He wants me to go alone, and I must bring the startling thunder bamboo magic treasure. It seems he has investigated me quite thoroughly. He knows things about Warner and me, otherwise he would not be so confident. Han Li snorted coldly. A flash of green light flickered across his face. With that person's divine abilities, wanting to investigate without anyone noticing the matter of junior brother Jingchu and sister Nangong is indeed an effortless task. After all, low-level cultivators, in front of a demonic cultivator with such great power, simply cannot keep any secrets at all. But junior brother, I cannot let you go on this dangerous venture alone. I have already gathered Fire Dragon Boy and about 5 or 6 others, fellow Taoists who are on good terms with us. When the time comes, you go first, junior brother. The rest of us will follow from behind. The moment that person appears, we will all attack at once. We must capture this person. Let this person know that our Western country is not a place one can just come to and leave as they please. The silver-haired elder suddenly said with resentment, Senior brother, your plan is a good one. However, this person is most likely on their guard. But it is still good to have you and the others follow along. If by any chance the other party is careless or overly arrogant, then it would be their fate to perish. Han Li thought for a moment and nodded. He agreed. To have some backup was naturally something he couldn't have asked for more. Good, it's settled then. Although that Tianju Peak is incredibly high, for cultivators like us, it's a fundamentally uneven match. I will place a mark on you, junior brother, to be used for tracking. When the time comes, if the opponent is truly unbeatable, all you have to do is stall for time. Junior brother, my friends and I will arrive in time, the silver-haired elder instructed. I must trouble senior brother to go to such lengths for this matter. I, Han, will definitely repay this favor. Han Li, who was never one to easily accept favors, had uncharacteristically spoken such words. Ha ha, junior brother, you are a member of our Lu Yuan sect. There is no need for such formalities. It's getting late. Junior brother Han, you should hurry and make some preparations. You must depart tonight, junior brother. Only then can you arrive at Tianju Mountain on time. After the silver-haired elder smiled, he seemed to nod casually at Han Li. He then took his leave and went back first. Watching Han Li's departing figure, the silver-haired elder let out a soft sigh. A knowing smile appeared on his face. To be able to make Han Li say those words just now, his painstaking efforts were not in vain after all. I suppose that even after I pass away when my time is up, this junior brother Han, remembering this favor, will do his utmost to support the Lu Yuan sect. The silver-haired elder felt a sense of relief in his heart, but after some thought, he slapped his storage pouch with one hand. Several talismans appeared in his hand. Then he tossed them into the air. They immediately transformed into several streaks of red light and shot out from the side hall. These sound-transmitting talismans were sent out to his friends who had checked into the guest-welcoming pavilion several days ago. All of those good friends, presumably, they would all gather here in just a moment. The elder sat on his chair with a contemplative expression, completely motionless. Later that night, after Han Li informed the silver-haired elder, he left Yunmeng Mountain and headed straight for Heavenly Pillar Mountain. Meanwhile, the silver-haired elder, an hour after Han Li had departed, along with Huo Long, Tongzi, and several other Nascent Soul eccentrics, also left the Fallen Cloud sect, secretly following behind, to conserve his magical power. The speed of Han Li's azure light escape was only average, and as Han Li flew forward in his escape light, he toyed with a small, 2 to 3-inch long golden sword. This was the very one into which Han Li had mixed Jang Gold, one of his 36 azure bamboo becloud swords. For some unknown reason, after mixing in the Jang Gold, the flying sword had completely turned a crimson gold color, and if he remembered correctly, Jang Gold, during its refining process, although it would change the surface color of the magic treasure. But once the magic treasure's refining was complete, and the Geng gold was truly infused into the magic treasure's interior, it should have reverted to its original color. But these 36 flying swords retained this golden color until the very end. It never faded away. This made Han Li a little curious. The power of these flying swords was not negatively affected. In fact, Han Li even had a faint feeling that this Geng gold seemed even more effective than the legends claimed. After he tested them, the power of the flying swords had increased by nearly 30%. In terms of sharpness, they were far superior to before. Han Li believed that a magic treasure made of ordinary materials, if it were to clash with these flying swords now, it would probably, under a single slash from these flying swords, be turned into a piece of scrap. Han Li was extremely surprised and delighted, but he was also somewhat puzzled. Finally, he thought of the thunderclap bamboo used as a raw material for the flying swords, and the other, rare material that had been added before, the refined essence. These materials were undoubtedly not ordinary items. Could it be that after adding the Geng gold, some other unexpected change occurred? Han Li thought for a long time, and could only explain it to himself this way. Since things were developing in a positive direction, he didn't want to waste more energy looking into the matter. Instead, he focused all his attention on the Great Geng Sword Formation. This divine ability required almost no special cultivation from Han Li. He could execute it with great ease. Han Li briefly tested it in his secret chamber, just a fraction of the sword formation's power. The result left Han Li completely stunned. The power of this sword formation was so immense. It proved that the jade slip hadn't exaggerated in the slightest, although he could only form a simpler version of the Great Geng Sword Formation for now. But the miraculous aspects of this formation already left Han Li in awe. His confidence for the upcoming trip greatly increased. Otherwise, why would Han Li go to meet the other party so obediently? The soul curse on Nangong Wan must be lifted, but without the Great Geng Sword Formation, Han Li would not have gone, thus to be a sitting duck, and be at their mercy. Of course, as for whether he could deal with a late Nascent Soul cultivator, Han Li had never truly fought against a late-stage cultivator before, so he had no way of comparing their strengths. But if a mid-Nascent Soul cultivator were to be trapped in this formation, Han Li was at least 80 to 90% confident that he could trap and even kill them with such a divine ability. At the very least, when facing a late Nascent Soul cultivator, self-preservation would be more than enough. However, how to find out from the other party the method to lift the soul sealing curse? This was really quite troublesome. Han Li could only deal with it after meeting the black-robed man. He would have to play it by ear. After sighing in amazement, a golden light flashed in Han Li's hand. The small sword disappeared without a trace. Then, he scanned behind him with his spiritual sense. But he didn't find any trace of the silver-haired old man and his group. Han Li wasn't surprised by this. Fearing that the black-robed man was secretly watching, they would surely hide themselves far away, relying only on a secret technique to track him. After all, their opponent could be a late-stage Nascent Soul demonic cultivator, so naturally, they had to be extremely cautious to prevent their presence from being discovered, which would only backfire. Skypillar Mountain was located to the west of the Cloud Dream Mountains, a solitary and steep mountain peak, yet it was over 10,000 zhang high, hence its name, Skypillar Mountain. Looking from afar, 1/3 of the mountain was shrouded in clouds and mist. It appeared extremely majestic and perilous, and surrounding this mountain was an entire expanse of low-lying hills. Standing on the mountainside, one could see everything for 1,000 li around. This was likely one of the reasons that the black-robed person had chosen this place. However, when Han Li flew within about 30 miles of this mountain, he immediately felt a spiritual sense instantly lock onto him. This spiritual sense seemed quite strong, but it only seemed to be at the level of a mid-Nascent Soul cultivator. However, Han Li didn't dare to let his guard down because of this. Who knew if the other party was deliberately hiding some of their strength, trying to create a false impression for him? Therefore, regarding this spiritual sense probing him, Han Li feigned ignorance and continued unhurriedly, flying towards the peak of Tianju Mountain. At almost the same time, on a certain Cyan rock atop Tianju Mountain, a person in a black robe opened his tightly shut eyes and looked coldly in the direction Han Li was flying from. "You've finally come. It seems the information I received wasn't wrong after all. Your relationship with that female cultivator is indeed extraordinary," he muttered to himself. "But to risk his life for a woman, I overestimated him," the black-robed person added. He turned to look at what was set up not far away, an exceptionally crude teleportation array. The black-robed person's eyes flickered incessantly when he sensed that Han Li was only tens of miles away. he suddenly stood up and strode towards the teleportation array. A moment later, the figure vanished in a flash of white light. Han Li also sensed the presence of the black-robed person. He was originally flying cautiously toward this place. Suddenly, the person he was sensing vanished completely. He couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Could this person have used an escape art to hide themselves? Are they planning to ambush me from the side? With this thought in mind, Han Li naturally became 12 times more cautious. What is this? But, as he cautiously approached the peak of Heavenly Pillar Mountain, he saw the unusually conspicuous small teleportation array. His expression changed instantly, and as his gaze shifted, he saw a newly erected green slate right beside the teleportation array. On it, with a sharp blade, were carved for small, inch-sized characters. They were perfectly clear. I wait for no one. After Han Li read these 4 words, his expression turned rather ugly. He cursed the other party's cunning in his heart. Although with his expertise in formation arts, he could tell at a glance that such a crude teleportation array couldn't possibly teleport someone very far. But even so, if it were to randomly teleport him to a place where the other party had set an ambush, wouldn't that be walking right into a trap? What was worse, once he teleported over, he had no idea if the silver-haired elder and the others could still find him. But judging by the message left on the stone stele, it was clear they didn't want to meet him face to face right now, and they gave him absolutely no chance to bargain. If he delayed for too long, the other party might get ruthless and just leave. That would be a huge problem. He didn't dare bet on whether the other party would actually do so. After all, he had killed the dual cultivation partner of the Yingluo sect's master. If the person who came was this demonic sect master, it wouldn't be impossible for them to do such a thing. It seemed that if he wanted to find a way to remove the soul-sealing curse, he had no choice but to take the risk. Han Li's expression was uncertain for a long while. He finally made up his mind. He first scanned the nearby area with his divine sense, confirming that no other demonic cultivators were hiding nearby. He then took out a sound transmission talisman. He whispered a few words into it. With a flick of his hand, it turned into a streak of red light and flew back the way he came. Then, without further hesitation, Han Li took a spirit beast pouch from his waist and emptied it into midair. The 3-colored gold devouring beetles swarmed out. It transformed into 3-colored battle armor and appeared on Han Li's body. He then flicked his sleeve robe. A small blue shield shot out, blocking the space in front of him. Then, he flipped over his other hand. After a flash of white light, a brocade scarf resembling green gauze appeared in his hand. Han Li lowered his head and looked at the brocade scarf. A strange expression flashed in his eyes. This brocade scarf was the very protective treasure gifted by Nangong Wan that day. Han Li gently caressed the smooth surface of the brocade scarf with his fingers. He stood there motionless. But after a short while, Han Li raised a hand and applied several more layers of protective barriers on himself. His figure blurred and stepped into the teleportation array. After taking a deep breath, Han Li raised his hand. An incantation seal struck a corner of the teleportation array. A brilliant white light flared up. Han Li then vanished from the teleportation array without a trace. In a lake thousands of miles away from Mount Lizu, on an unnamed islet in the center of the lake, a white spiritual light lit up somewhere on the island. Han Li's figure then emerged. The very instant he appeared, ignoring the physical discomfort from the teleportation, without a second thought, he first activated the blue light shield in front of him. It instantly expanded dramatically, shielding most of his body behind it. However, Han Li did not feel any attack. Only then did he calm down and look around. Don't worry. To deal with a mere early-stage Nascent Soul cultivator like you, I wouldn't stoop to a sneak attack. Although, I have heard you're no ordinary early-stage cultivator. A voice that sounded unfamiliar came from not far across from Han Li. When Han Li heard this voice, his heart stirred. This was definitely not the voice of the Yin Luo sect master. Could it really be the work of another demonic cultivator? This thought made a flicker of surprise flash in his eyes. He looked towards the source of the voice. He saw a young man in black robes, in his 20s, about 30-odd zhang away, with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at him impassively. Although Han Li had never seen the true face of the Yin Luo sect master, but in terms of both physique and voice, this person was definitely not the man in black robes who fought against Zhou He and old Devil Huan during the border battle that day. HMPH, not a sneak attack. Then why use such a method? To place a soul-sealing curse on me, Han Li said as his gaze swept over the area. To his surprise, he couldn't discern the cultivation level of the person before him. This made him narrow his eyes slightly. He didn't dare to lower his guard for even a moment, but his words were laced with cold sarcasm. By now, he had taken in all of his surroundings. This was the edge of a swamp. They were muddy puddles. It was exceptionally damp everywhere. Not far away was a grove of short trees, and the faint sound of a lake could be heard. Han Li frowned slightly, then his expression smoothed out in an instant. He sensed an unusual fluctuation of spiritual energy here. As expected, some kind of elaborate trap had been laid, although he guessed it wasn't a particularly powerful formation, but being teleported here meant he had completely lost the advantage of the terrain. Hey, if I hadn't used such methods, would fellow Taoist Han have come here so obediently? Although I possess some minor abilities, I'm not yet arrogant enough to think I could confront your entire sect. The young man showed no signs of anger. Instead, he spoke in a slow and measured tone. You are not the sect master of the Ying Luo sect. Han Li stared at him. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. Why, is there something about me that resembles my sect master? The black-robed youth gave a sinister chuckle, and said leisurely, not at all. But to be able to easily sneak into my Luo Yuan sect, and you even managed to injure someone and leave unscathed. I truly had no idea that your esteemed sect had such a master like yourself. I wonder why you didn't appear during the Great War. Han Li seemed a bit puzzled, but it was as if he was muttering to himself. While I would love to explain a thing or two to fellow Taoist Han, I didn't bring you all the way here, just for the sake of formally introducing myself. Have you brought your gold elemental magic treasure? The young man gave a faint smile. He said with a strange expression on his face. Hearing the young man's words, Han Li glared coldly at him, without uttering a single word. Hey, fellow Taoist Han, if you're trying to stall for time, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. The teleportation array I've set up is a special one that can only be used at times. Once it has been used twice, the array on the other end will self-destruct. Without at least half a day, they will never be able to find their way here, and I believe half a day is more than enough time to settle things between us. The black-robed youth looked extremely confident and scoffed. You want to know if I have the thunder bamboo treasure on me? Shouldn't you first tell me how to break the soul-sealing curse? A glint flashed in Han Li's eyes, but said in a slightly softer tone, the method to undo the soul seal curse is right here in this jade slip. However, first, let me have a look at the main golden thunder magic treasure. I am different from my sect master. I only want that startling thunder bamboo, not the veil between you and him. The revenge for your partner has nothing to do with me, and I can't be bothered to interfere in this matter. The smile vanished from the youth's face. He flipped his palm over. A jet black jade slip appeared in his hand. Then, the youth gave him a meaningful look. Of course, although the startling thunder bamboo magic treasure is very important, I, however, for my partner, care about her that much more, Han Li said without the slightest hesitation. He then brought his hands together in front of his chest, and then gently parted them. A clap of thunder sounded. Then, amidst faint, crackling arcs of gold, a small azure sword appeared in his hand. Han Li held the blade between two fingers, and gave the youth an expressionless glance. When the youth saw this, a flash of greed flickered in his eyes. Then, after a brief moment of thought, he suddenly flicked his wrist. Instantly, the black jade slip in his hand flew slowly toward Han Li. The speed was incredibly slow, as if being pulled by an invisible string. Han Li was taken aback at first, then he immediately understood the other's intention. He didn't say much either. He similarly tossed out the small arrow in his hand. Also like an ox pulling a cart, it slowly drifted towards the other person. Although the two were manipulating the items in their hands, their gazes were fixed on each other's faces, without even blinking. When the two items brushed past each other, Han Li and the youth both secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Their expressions relaxed slightly. The two of them caught the incoming objects almost simultaneously. They hurriedly took a closer look. As a result, the moment the two of them carefully identified them, wry smiles appeared on both their faces. So this is your esteemed thunderclap bamboo treasure. The black-robed youth sneered and suddenly rubbed his hands together. A silver-white flame ignited. The small sign sword in his hand instantly turned to ash. I, too, have never heard that the most basic 5 elements cultivation technique in the cultivation world could remove something like the wine soul curse. Han Li, expressionless, raised a blue flame in his hand. The arrow instantly froze into ice. Then it shattered into spakes of fluorescent light, vanishing without a trace. HMPH. It seems neither of us trusts the other, but that's fine. I will ask you one last time. Are you willing to hand over the golden thunder bamboo treasure? As long as you give this treasure to me, I will turn around and leave immediately, and I will leave behind the method to cure your companion. Otherwise, I can still find this treasure after I kill you. This is not some hidden cache. You must be carrying it with you. The black-robed youth's expression turned grim. Traces of killing intent emanated from his body. A ferocious look appeared on his face. What a coincidence? Your way of thinking is quite similar to mine, fellow Taoist. Since you were the one who cast the Wine Soul Curse, the method to dispel it must be in your mind. After I kill you, I can also search your soul, to get what I want to know. Han Li let out a breath. He said icily, search my soul. In these past few hundred years, you are the first person to dare speak to me this way. I will leave your corpse intact. The black-robed youth laughed out of anger. He raised a hand, and several spell seals flew out in all directions. A rumbling sound came from nearby. 7 dazzling white pillars of light shot up into the sky. At the same time, the sound of a dragon's roar was heard. Upon the 7 pillars of light, silver-white flood dragons simultaneously appeared one after another. The roars echoed in unison. Oh no, it's the 7 dragon stakes. Master, dodge quickly. Han Li had not yet seen clearly. What was so special about these 7 pillars? When he heard Yin Yu's voice by his ear, her panicked voice seemed filled with fear. Although Han Li didn't know about these so-called 7 dragon stakes, exactly how powerful they were, but hearing Yin Yu's voice so panicked, he naturally became alarmed. With a shake of his large sleeve, the 36 green bamboo-wined cloud swords emitted a humming sound, and flew out from his sleeve together like a school of fish. Since he knew the opponent was no ordinary demonic cultivator, Han Li was in no mood to use other methods to slowly probe the opponent's strength. He directly unleashed the flying swords he had meticulously refined, intending to defeat the enemy in a single move. 36 streaks of brilliant golden light circled for a moment above Han Li's head. He successively cast incantation seals upon them. Immediately, all the golden lights trembled slightly, and at once multiplied into hundreds of streaks, creating identical sword lights, shining with a brilliant radiance, just as Han Li was about to activate the incantation seals. Just as these beams of light were about to form a great formation, the 7 surrounding pillars of light attacked first. He saw the silver flood dragons on the pillars twist simultaneously, and turned their heads to look at the center. Han Li opened his mouth wide. A brilliant fluorescent light shone. It was as if an oily mist was about to spray from his mouth. With no time to think about the implications, a spiritual light flashed from the blue shield. The treasure instantly transformed into a vast blue water curtain. It completely enveloped him. With his other hand, he cast out that brocade scarf. It turned into a vast expanse of pale green mist, floating around the water curtain, and at the same time, a white shadow flew swiftly out from Han Li's sleeve. It landed on the ground, and transformed into a slender and graceful beautiful woman. It was precisely Yin Yue possessing the body of a demon fox. She had come out on her own, just as Han Li was feeling surprised. Yin Yue waved her hand and a flash of purple light flew out. It was the purple cloud blade. Amidst Yin Yu's nervous expression, this ancient treasure turned into a purple fire net and set up another layer of defense on the very outside. Han Li's heart skipped a beat. He had set up 2 layers of defense, yet Yin Yue still thought it was not enough. Are these 7 dragon pillars really that powerful? This thought had just crossed Han Li's mind. The 7 silver flood dragons had already silently shot out a glowing light from their mouths. It was 7 seemingly tangible silver beams of light. The 7 bowl-sized silver beams flashed and vanished, crashing into the fire net transformed from the purple capital. The glowing light and the purple fire intertwined. As a result, the purple net only held for a moment, before it was pierced with 7 holes like snow melting in the spring sun. The 7 glowing beams emerged with their momentum unabated, and struck the green mist transformed from the Jinpa ancient treasure. Upon contact, the green mist churned violently, showing signs of collapse. When Han Li saw this, he couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. His expression changed slightly. If this continues, the 3 layers of protection he had set up would be completely shattered in an instant. What kind of attack are these beams of light? How can they be so powerful? Just as Han Li was thinking this, who would have known that when Ming Yue saw this scene, a look of great relief appeared on her face instead. So, it's just a replica. It actually had me worried for a moment. Ming Yue muttered and formed a hand seal. She opened her mouth, and along with a puff of fragrant mist, she spat out a pink pearl. This round bead was the size of a thumb. A fragrant aroma wafted from it. Then, from Yin Yu's mouth came the sound of a pleasant, low incantation. She extended a slender white finger and tapped the bead. With a soft pop, the round bead burst open on its own. It transformed into countless, exceptionally brilliant, glittering motes of dust. They flew towards the surrounding blue water curtain. Han Li was taken aback for a moment, but he had no intention of intervening. As a result, after the water curtain absorbed this powder, it erupted with spiritual light. Its surface suddenly brightened, as if the entire water curtain was composed of countless copper mirrors of the same size. At this moment, the glowing light shattered the outer layer of white light mist. It struck mercilessly upon the final layer of defense. Seeing this, Han Li suddenly grew nervous, but the hand seals he was forming didn't stop for a moment. At some unknown point, the sword lights that had been hovering above his head began to disappear one by one in a strange manner. The water curtain emitted a dazzling, piercing gleam. After the 7 streaks of glowing light trembled slightly, they were unexpectedly reflected back by the radiance, and following their original path, they shot back towards the 7 pillars of light without the slightest deviation. Its speed was so fast, it was even faster than the next life. This move not only caught Han Li by surprise, the young man in the black robe was even more stunned. He was completely distracted by the sudden appearance of a beautiful young woman. His mind was utterly captivated, and the words exquisite treasure that Yin Yue had just muttered did not escape his ears either. It caused a flicker of surprise to cross the young man's face. A continuous rumbling sound was heard. Those 7 pillars of light and the silver joust on them were instantly engulfed by the shimmering light, and were reduced to nothingness. This seemingly powerful treasure was actually destroyed so easily. It was truly hard to believe. Yin Yue pursed her red lips, a smug smile appearing on her face. So, it wasn't just an imitation. It was also an incomplete product. It really gave me quite a scare. Yin Yue clapped her jade-like hands. She chuckled softly, her ample chest heaving gently. An incomplete product. How do you know about the 7 dragon stakes tribulation breaking method? Seeing the 7 dragon stakes destroyed, the young man in the black robe opposite him, his expression turned cold and grim. After hearing Yin Yu's words about it being an incomplete product, he immediately shouted sternly, although he knew what he had obtained in his hands. This treasure was definitely not the legendary original artifact, but he also felt that for a replica, its powers were far too simple. Now, upon hearing Yin Yu's words, his heart stirred, and he was mostly convinced. Yin Yue heard the words of the black-robed youth. Her eyes flickered, showing no intention of answering whatsoever. Instead, her hands formed a seal, and she cast a magical sigil at the Shuamu. Instantly, the Shuamu flashed with light. A cloud of pink mist flew out from it, and in a flash, it condensed back into the original pink orb. Yin Yue parted her red lips, and a stream of radiant light shot from her mouth, extending and retracting to pull the orb inside. She absorbed it back into her abdomen. Ha ha. So, you're a fox spirit? But your cultivation is only at the 7th level. That is rather strange. However, this is the Great Jin. There are many cultivators here, who all desire a fox spirit companion. A fox spirit that can take human form is priceless, comparable to a first-rate treasure of heaven and earth. It seems this trip was not a waste after all. The black-robed immortal youth was furious, but after carefully scanning inside the water screen with the divine stone, at the bright moon and that pink orb several times, his face revealed a look of ecstatic joy. Although Zibai would love to go with the immortal, unfortunately, Yin Yue already has a master. I'm afraid I cannot fulfill your wish, Senior. Yin Yu's expression changed slightly at first, but then her charming eyes glanced about, covering her mouth. She smiled sweetly and said, "A master, that master of yours, will have his soul scattered in a moment. If you obediently come with me, I will spare your life. Don't be ungrateful. Following this venerable one is far better than staying in this backwater." The black-robed youth, with a greedy gaze, stared intently at Yin Yue, and said dismissively, "Have you lost your mind? I, her master, am perfectly fine right here, and you are already making a move on my handmaiden. Why don't you look around before you speak?" Han Li, who had been standing still without moving, suddenly said mockingly, "Look around. Are you talking about these trashy sword lights? Although you were finding so many flying swords as artifacts at once, is indeed somewhat unexpected. But surely you must know, a Natal Dharma treasure must be constantly nurtured with one's own true essence. Only then can it unleash its immense power. For you to refine so many flying swords is an utterly foolish idea. As for conjuring so many sword lights, it's an even more laughably flashy yet impractical display. In a battle against cultivators of the same rank, what use could such a divine ability possibly have? Even if I were to just stand here without moving, these sword lights of yours couldn't harm a single hair on my head." The black-robed youth swept his gaze over the dense and suddenly appearing, and numerous sword lights, and said with disdain, "You do have a point. However, before we continue, I'd like to ask you something. Fellow Taoist, are you a late-stage Nascent Soul cultivator? If you are not, then you can just die." Han Li wore a peculiar expression on his face. Suddenly, killing intent flashed in his eyes as he spoke. At the same time, he secretly activated the incantation, the Great Geng Sword Formation that he had already quietly set up. Hearing Han Li's question, the black-robed youth opposite him tensed up. Then he immediately sensed that something was amiss. He hurriedly flipped his hand, A pitch-black short axe appeared in his palm. Faint patterns flickered on the surface of this axe. There was a demon's face on the handle, carved upon it with lifelike detail. Clearly, this was an extraordinary treasure. And at this moment, the surrounding golden sword lights flared up, bursting with a clear spiritual radiance. But they did not attack immediately. Instead, they began to vanish into thin air one by one. The black-robed youth was taken aback. He hastily released his divine sense, trying to locate these sword lights. But after sweeping the area with his divine sense, he found nothing unusual at all. This made the black-robed youth's heart sink. He hesitated no longer. With a cold snort, he unhesitatingly cast out the black axe in his hand. After a flash of black light, the axe instantly expanded. It transformed into an axe, 60 to 70 feet in size. Looking exceptionally sharp, the giant axe swayed gently and chopped fiercely towards the void as a golden light bloomed. An inconspicuous golden thread then emerged. It met the giant axe as it chopped down and vanished in a flash. With a sharp clang, the giant axe split into two pieces down the middle and fell from the sky. At this, the look of contempt on the black-robed youth's face vanished without a trace. His expression grew solemn. With a raise of his hand, an emerald-green flying dagger shot out. It transformed into a 10-foot-long green streak as it sped away. But the same thing happened all over again. The moment the green-red light flew out from the group of stonefish tents, it was struck out of thin air by the same charode golden threads. After erupting in a burst of green light, it was sliced into 6 or 7 pieces and fell into the dust. Witnessing this, the black-robed youth was very experienced. Being so knowledgeable, he gasped in shock. He instantly understood what was going on. It was just that, logically, this array should require dozens, or even hundreds of people to be able to set up. Yet Hanli had actually, all by himself, managed to set up such a powerful array. This truly left the youth somewhat dumbfounded. The black-robed youth had just begun to understand, but he was given no time to think of a way to break the formation. He immediately formed a hand seal. The soul-severing stone simultaneously connected to all the lights of the array. With a sudden activation, the entire great array stirred. Suddenly, a bizarre scene appeared around the black-robed youth. Countless golden threads could be seen shimmering with a strange golden glow. They flickered in and out of sight, appearing all around the youth. Their flickering was completely silent and utterly without pattern. Yet they slowly began to close in toward the center. Seeing this, the black-robed youth's face turned grim. He abruptly slapped his storage pouch with one hand. Over 10 white orbs covered in blood-red veins appeared in his hand. Then, his figure spun around rapidly. These round beads simultaneously shot out in all directions. Hanli's heart stirred upon seeing these round beads. Could these also be something like thunder beads? This thought flashed through Hanli's mind. But the activation of the Great Geng Sword Formation showed no signs of stopping at all. These golden threads were one of the divine abilities of the Great Geng Sword Formation. It was somewhat similar to a sword cultivator's technique of transforming swords into threads. It was formed by turning hundreds of sword gleams into astonishing sword che, which was then condensed into threads. Because it borrowed the power of the formation and was mixed with the essence of Geng metal, it was already incomparably sharp on its own. Therefore, the resulting sword threads were far more formidable than those of an ordinary sword cultivator. Ordinary magic treasures and ancient treasures could not withstand the cutting power of the golden threads at all. As for things like thunder beads, Hanli wasn't afraid of them either. As long as the 36 hidden flying swords themselves were unharmed, even if these sword threads were destroyed, they could still be endlessly regenerated. They were completely unafraid of attacks. This was also what made the Great Geng Sword Formation so terrifying. Just as Hanli was pondering this, the golden light flashed past the round beads, which also triggered the formation's restrictions. They were sliced into several pieces by the numerous golden threads, and then they burst open. It was completely unexpected. These round beads did not contain any hidden thunder fire. Instead, after they burst open, they released clouds of a thick, dark red, bloody substance. As soon as this bloody substance spread out, it immediately permeated the air. At the same time, it gave off a strange and nauseating odor. The stench was incredibly pungent. These round beads were called blood thunder pearls. It is said they are made from the most foul substances in the world, and created through a refining process. When used against an enemy, as long as it is not a treasure refined with demonic techniques, once it is tainted by this bloody substance, its power will plummet and its spiritual essence will be lost. No matter how great your magic treasure's divine abilities are, or how high its spiritual essence is, if you want to restore the treasure's power, you must re-refine it with true fire for several days. Of course, These blood thunder pearls are rare even among the demonic sects. Not only are the raw materials extremely scarce, but the success rate of refining them is also pitifully low. They are much more difficult to refine than ordinary thunder pearls. These 10-odd pearls were already everything the black-robed young man had accumulated over nearly 100 years. As an elder of one of the 10 great demonic sects in the state of Jin, he was very experienced and knowledgeable. Once he recognized the sword formation set up by Han Li, he immediately thought of a plan. Using the blood thunder pearls to contaminate Han Li's flying swords, the sword formation originally required coordination with countless swords to unleash its divine abilities. Once the formation is set, if the control of the flying swords falters even slightly, the sword formation will naturally collapse on its own. This method is used by the demonic cultivators of the state of Jin to counter the sword cultivator sects that wield sword formations. It is one of their most common tactics. Of course, an item as exceptionally precious as a blood bud would not normally be used in a one-on-one duel. It is typically reserved for large-scale confrontations, where it would actually be deployed. After all, under normal circumstances, how could a sword formation possibly be controlled by a single person? Seeing these mists of blood swirling, although he didn't know what was happening, he clearly felt a sense of strangeness in his heart. Just as he was feeling a bit uneasy, a deep, rumbling thunder suddenly echoed out. Within the blood mist, patches of golden light appeared simultaneously. Then, arcs of pale golden lightning shot out one after another. The moment these electric arcs made contact with the blood mist, they immediately exploded. They were actually annihilated at the same time. In the blink of an eye, these more than 10 clouds of blood mist were mutually destroyed by Han Li's evil warding divine lightning. Han Li was stunned. The evil warding divine lightning hadn't waited for him to activate it. It had actually shot out from the flying swords on its own. This was the first time he had ever encountered such a thing. And that blood mist, which was obviously evil in nature, it can actually neutralize the evil warding divine lightning. That's truly unbelievable. Han Li naturally did not know that these blood lightning beads were specifically designed to counter treasures of the righteous path. It was almost the same as the evil warding divine lightnings special characteristic of countering demonic path techniques. The two happened to be mutual counters. Under normal circumstances, neither could suppress the other. And while the blood mist just now was considerable, compared to the divine lightning contained within the 36 flying swords, it was naturally far inferior. So the blood mist was completely dispelled in an instant. Evil warding divine lightning. These flying swords are all magic treasures made from thunderclap bamboo. Impossible. How can there be so much thunderclap bamboo? Seeing this situation, the black-robed youth's face instantly turned pale. He cried out in shock, "I'll answer that question for you in the underworld." Han Li retorted coldly upon hearing this. At the same time, after taking a deep breath, he once again activated the incantation in his mind. The golden threads, which had paused temporarily because of the blood mist's appearance, silently pressed inwards. This aura sword formation was indeed immensely powerful. But for Han Li's current cultivation level, it was still quite a strain. Although he could operate this sword formation, the drain on his spiritual power was truly astonishing. And after activating the sword formation, he was powerless to accelerate the sword formation any further. Otherwise, if he could have just made the sword threads converge in an instant, he could have slain his opponent immediately. His eyes were fixed, watching the black-robed youth, to see what method he would use to counter him. Han Li estimated that based on the sword formation's mana consumption, it was actually meant for Nascent Soul, mid-stage cultivators, who were the most suitable for cultivating this divine ability, if not for the fact that he only activated half of the sword formation, and that his mana was far superior to an ordinary Nascent Soul. Early-stage cultivator. At his current level, he would have been completely unable to cast this sword formation. Hemph, do you really think a mere sword formation can truly trap this venerable one? Your sword formation may be powerful, but can it sever this one's authentic sect treasure? Upon hearing this, a layer of blackshire rose on the black-robed youth's face. He said grimly. He looked at the golden threads, now less than 100 feet away. Without another word, he raised a hand and fiercely struck his own chest. With a splurt, a mouthful of black blood sprayed from his mouth. Mixed within the black blood was a small green banner about an inch long. The moment this banner left his mouth, a green light flashed. It instantly absorbed all the surrounding black blood, leaving nothing behind. The banner had now turned a jade green color. The black-robed youth grimly beckoned to the banner. With a whoosh, the small banner transformed into a streak of black light and shot into his hand. As he rubbed it between his hands, a brilliant light burst forth. The green banner immediately grew to be several feet in size. The surface of the banner shimmered with green light. It was shrouded in a gloomy mist, making it impossible to see its true form clearly. However, the banner was clearly missing a corner. It looked as if it was damaged and had not yet been restored. Han Li's pupils contracted. He whispered the words, the Gui Luo banner. The sect master of the Yin Luo sect had once said that he would use the sect's authentic treasure, the Gui Luo banner, to deal with the Hewan Old Devil, although the sect master never actually ended up using it. But Han Li had committed the name to memory. Now that the black-robed youth had also produced this small banner, Han Li was naturally almost certain of its identity.